Please help support the channel by visiting our Amazon store, affiliate link below. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel, and this is my review of the Orville Season 1, Episode 3, About a Girl, which is definitely a straight-up continuation from last week's episode, and I will fully admit, my predictions for where they were going to go with that storyline was totally wrong. Last week, I was all, oh yeah, totally. Bortus had the girl, it's going to be a big thing, it's going to be a big arc over the course of the season, and I was horrifically wrong. This episode is a Bortus episode, giving us more about him as a character and his desire to be a good Moclan, which is his species, but also the conflict of a parent dealing with a child that has a, well, you could call it an abnormality. So this episode, like I said, is all about who he is. And it starts off with everyone looking at the baby girl, and they're all, oh, she's so adorable. But then we find out that Bortus went to Claire, the doctor, and asked her to perform a sex change on the infant. Because that is Moclan custom. They are a single gender species, and there's one girl born every 75 years. So as a result of this, Claire deems it unethical and says, no, I won't do it. I won't do it at all. Bortus then goes to Captain Ed and tells Captain Ed, hey man, I need you to do this. And Ed's like, no, that's unethical. This is a Union ship. You are a Union officer. That is a child that was born under my roof, so to speak. I have to protect it. And in which case then, you have the rest of the ship trying to find ways, or the rest of the crew trying to find ways to get Bortus to come around to the idea that changing his baby's gender because they deem girls to be weaker and inferior is just ridiculous horse crap. And Alara comes in first off and tries, because she's super strong and everything else, tries to use more of a brute force approach by showing him that girls are stronger in terms of that, but she's Solaran, so he already knows that her strength is going to be increased and everything else, and that doesn't do anything other than aggravate Bortus to the point of where he's snippy with Clyden, but Gordon and Lee come over with a six-pack of brews and a good old Earth movie to cheer him up. Now, this is where I had to laugh excessively, simply because Gordon, and this is pure Gordon for you, Gordon brought over Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and that is what triggered Bortus into going, whoa, maybe this is not a good idea. Maybe this is not something I should partake in, and that actually causes him to have a change of heart. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is used as an argument against sexual reassignment surgery on an infant. There's a few things in this episode that really made me laugh. That and the whole hologram scene where they're raiding the Bandito compound, and then instead of a showdown, it's a dance-off that the guy wants to have. I was legitimately laughing at that. Like, there are some good curveballs this show will throw you that is just hysterical. Also, the Norm Macdonald bit trying to hit on the doctor and showing her a little bit of the of his junk, and basically saying there's more where that came from was great. But anyway, I'm off topic here. So Bortus has a change of heart and wants Clyden to also do the same. Clyden refuses. And as a result of this, they have, opted to call in a Moclan ship to take the baby back to the home planet to conduct this, the transition themselves, right? Because they feel that, again, that is kind of the thing. When when the people arrive, the Moclan officers arrive, there's a showdown, conflict, and they decide basically to go back to Moclan to hold a tribunal to determine whether or not this is something that should happen or to strike it down. Because if both parents say, no, it's all good, we don't want to do this surgery, then they don't have to do it. But if one parent says yay on the surgery and the other parent says nay on the surgery, then they're going to go with the parent that says yes, which is really messed up, but it's like, that's just their rules. So then, of course, they have their tribunal, in which case Kelly becomes the advocate for Bortus. She argues in favor of biology and intelligence as being key factors that, women can engage in that are not going to be a genetic handicap, which is what the Mocklin advocate was basically saying. And she uses, Gordon's intelligence and Alana's strength to kind of showcase that women can be as strong as men, and men are definitely not as smart as they believe, the Mocklins believe that the women are, you know what I mean, in terms of how they view intelligence. And of course, this is where there's a little bit of a situation that a little bit of a leap in storytelling. Somewhere along the line, Ed gets the idea to do a search using Isaac to search the planet's surface for something specific. I mean, clearly we know what he's looking for. He's looking for another female because one's born every 75 years. And we found out that Clyden is in fact also a born female who was then turned, and had the surgery. So there's one of those things where I don't know how old Clyden is. If they said there's one born every 75 years, clearly Clyden is not 75 years old. Well, he might be. We have no idea. Or she might be, depending on how you want to look at it. And so there's that. That's just that's kind of what they throw in there. But anyway, Ed it basically goes and finds a female, finds her in a cave way off in the distance. But I don't know how we got to that point. I'm not sure how Ed was able to figure out what to look for. That's a leap in logic that, moved the story along as just a person who pays attention to the little details. That was something that kind of threw me off. But Alara, and Lee head off and they meet the woman and they bring her back to give her testimony. We then discover that she has also been kind of moonlighting as the best Mocklin writer around, posing as a man under a pen name in order to contribute to society that way. Of course, even with this revelation that a Mocklin female can be the best writer on the planet, the single gender species still rules in favor of keeping it a single gender species, at least on paper. And so they basically ruled that they have to then perform the surgery on the child. And you're thinking to yourself, there's literally no way this is going to happen. There's no way that they're going to sit there and actually conduct this transition. TV shows have happy endings. How would this even happen? They did. They actually went through with it. That was shocking to me. I was legitimately like, wow, they went there, because the entire argument of the show, or of the episode, by the way, which was written by Seth MacFarlane, and who did a great job. Seth MacFarlane. I keep putting a D on the end of that. But there was a thing there where he, basically talks about how, circumcision, right? They bring up the idea of circumcision. Circumcision is something that's practiced in human species. There is no necessary reason for it. It's just something that some people do, but they call it a defect. Would that change the life? And they're trying to, argue that circumcisions and this gender reassignment surgery are very similar in nature, because the Mocklins view it as something as marginal as foreskin, even though to certain people the foreskin is something that should be tampered with. There's a sanctity there, and that's a whole argument for another day. But it was interesting that they tried drawing those correlations to one another as a way of proving the argument. But still, at the end of the day, I mean, they went through with it. Now Bortus and Clyden have Topa, their son. And that is just crazy that they went through with it. It's one of those things where people were telling me when the episode aired, because I saw it a couple hours later, they were saying, oh, this episode is deep. It goes there, and it talks a lot about where we are as a society. I think how we view, people who kind of force a transition on their child for whatever purpose. My original take on it was this was more of a commentary on, the what age do you allow a child to transition if your child is trans? In the beginning of the episode, Ed's saying no, you wait for them to get old enough and decide on their own if they want to. And then Bortus counters back with, well, why not do it earlier? If you already know that's what the child's going to want to do. And they'll be shunned by society sort of thing. So there's a lot of little things that went into this that, while not perfectly espoused, definitely added to the overall discussion and the deepness of the show. And it's one of the things I really, really, really liked. Looking at this episode as a whole, I mean, I just want to say this too. The Orville is rapidly becoming one of my favorite shows. Rapidly becoming it. I just happen to really enjoy the characters. I like the fact that even though we're in the first couple episodes of the series, and they're going through the process of giving us episodes that are dedicated to each individual cast member or crew member in order to give us more story background to them, it's good stuff. Last week was all about, Alara coming to terms with responsibility and leadership. This week is all about Bortus. And I think I said last week, too, that they haven't really given Bortus much to do. Now, this episode was all about Bortus. Even though I feel it was about Bortus, he still took a bit more of the back seat. But it really did give us a bit more in terms of how the crew interacts with one another. I liked Gordon. I liked Lee's a little bit. I love the fact that Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was enough of a push for Bortus to change his mind. But it makes sense, too, in its own right, because Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is about, we all know the story, but like Rudolph born with a red nose, there's a defect there. There's a difference. Everyone shuns him. But then you discover at the end that there's a usefulness there. And that is how the Mocklins think. That is how their mind works. And so very much looking at, the difference between the scenes of Alara and Bortus, boxing one another. A show of strength is not going to change his mind. Although because they're meant to represent essentially the Klingons to an extent, you would assume that the Mocklins would probably be responsive to that. And I love that they weren't. I love that it was actually something with subtext, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, entertaining, but with subtext. That was what caused him to have a change of heart, because ultimately this episode, while entertaining and laugh out loud funny in a couple scenes, adds to the conversation. There's a lot of subtext there. And so if the Orville can keep up this level of writing, which, to be fair, I'm not going to sit there and hold my breath for that. I just still want to be entertained. I can fully say that this is going to be one of those shows that will definitely have many seasons. The viewership hasn't really dropped in a negative way. It's now on Thursdays at 9 p.m., which is a good time slot to have. And it doesn't want to be up Sunday nights competing with Star Trek Discovery, even though I have a feeling ultimately it's going to blow it out of the damn water. But seriously, Seth MacFarlane and Brandon Braga, you guys are doing an amazing job on this show. You're developing a fan base. You are establishing a universe, and one that people love. What I loved about this, too, to kind of finish this thing up, is that when you look at the idea of what the show was, the optimistic side of space travel, and you look at an episode like this and how they're handling the different species discussing their societal norms and how they differ from one another. While the subject of a military intervention did come up, it wasn't the key focus. It wasn't trying to push to that. It was explaining it, even though you have nothing to do to control it, but putting it out there in a way where it's like you can understand it without condoning or condemning, essentially. Again, more of an optimistic viewpoint to these situations than one we might see reflected in other forms of science fiction media. And so for that, I'm actually very happy that this show exists. But I do want to know what you guys think about this. Let me know in the comments below. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been $3 Theater. Hopefully you guys are liking these reviews and recaps. We'll definitely pick it up next week with episode 4. I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day. Peace out.